Hey guys, how's it going? Leak here. So with midnight around the corner, we probably aren't getting any major class changes until at least like the 0.5 patch. And survival still has some areas or talents that either need attention or should probably get reworked. And I'm sure we're not the only spec like this either. And I want to go over 5 of the biggest issues that survival currently has that would be pretty simple to fix in a minor patch. And just to be clear, these aren't in any order or anything. And there are some bigger issues that I want to see addressed as well, like Pack Leader has some really big core issues, but these are going to be topics for another video. Also, everything I want to talk about is strictly gameplay or mechanics related. And if you think like the theme of the spec could be improved, let me know your thoughts down in the comments, because I'm curious to hear how others feel about the theme of survival. Okay, so I really quickly wanted to mention this. Over the entire course of the beta, Boomstick was benefiting from Tip of the Spear more than it should have, and has been doing 15% extra damage. This bug was fixed, but at the same time, Boomstick got another 10% nerf in the most recent tuning, meaning we got an unannounced 15% nerf from the bug fix, in addition to the 10% nerf from the patch notes, so it nerfed 25% last week. And it feels really bad to report this bug early, watch Boomstick get repeatedly nerfed over and over again throughout the beta, and then fix the bug to nerf it even more. And right now, on single target, it's almost worth ignoring Boomstick entirely, like it's barely a DPS gain. And honestly, like, fixing bugs is great, and I really want bugs fixed. But I also really wish the damage loss was compensated from the fix, like it feels like it's been nerfed too much now. So if you've been playing survival and Boomstick feels way weaker than normal, this bug fix is why. So the first thing that I want to talk about is Shower of Blood and our entire bleed package. So Pack Leader seems like pretty incentivized to run a bleed build. We've got this talent in the Pack Leader tree called No Mercy, where our bleeds deal 35% increased damage, so you would think like with this talent, we want to run a bleed build, right? And then in the survival tree itself, we also have so many different bleed talents. So for example, we've got Shrapnel Bomb. The dot of Wildfire Bomb is now a bleed. We've got Bloodseeker, giving us increased attack speed for every bleeding enemy. We've got Sick'em, making kill command crits give us bleeds. And then we have Shower of Blood, where our bleeds deal extra damage. And then lastly, in the Pack Leader tree itself, we have a choice node to make the bear's Ren Flesh bleed do more damage too. But even with all of these nodes, we're still not doing very much bleed damage, and it's still not worth running Shower of Blood. Shower of Blood's a 2-point node that increases bleed damage by 8% or 16% for the second point. And it sounds like a cool talent, and that sounds like it would be a big increase, but we still don't do very much bleed damage. And I even tried to make like the best bleed builds possible for single target and on AoE, and I sim them versus normal builds. So on single target, running Shower of Blood was about 3% worse. And then in AoE against 8 targets, which is the target count where our bleeds are the strongest, it's about 4% worse. So I've got some sims pulled up for the best bleed builds with Shower of Blood, and I want to show like just how little bleed damage we're actually doing and why Shower of Blood is so weak. Like even on single target, only about 9% of our damage is from bleeds with Shower of Blood buffing them. So we have like Sick'em, 1% of our damage. Wildfire Bomb bleed, 6.1% of our damage. Ren Flesh, 2.1% of our damage, so a little over 9%, and like buffing 9% of your damage by 16%, and it costs 2 talent points is really not a good talent point investment. And that's one of the biggest reasons why Shower of Blood is so weak on single target. Like we're just simply not doing enough bleed damage. In AoE itself, we're doing a little more bleed damage, but that doesn't mean the bleed build is better. Like it's actually worse because you have to make trade-offs to take these bleed talents, and the talents we're giving up to take something like Shower of Blood are very good. So we have to take Shower of Blood, and not only that, but we have to spec into Sick'em to get Shower of Blood. And Sick'em is only doing 0.2% of our damage in AoE, because Sick'em only goes on one target at a time because it's a single target talent. So this is very weak, and it's bringing down the bleed build in AoE. But anyway, looking at our bleed damage, it's about 15% in AoE, like Sick'em, 0.2% of our damage in AoE, but this is required to get Shower of Blood. Wildfire Bomb bleed, 10.6%. Ren Flesh, 4.1%, so about 15%, but even in AoE, like 15% of our damage is bleeds, so taking something like Shower of Blood, which is a very hefty talent point investment, is just never going to be worth it with how little bleed damage we do. Anyway, so the main takeaway here, for a 2 talent point investment, Shower of Blood is never worth taking with how little bleed damage we actually do. Shower of Blood either needs to be a single talent point, or these values need to be bumped up like a lot for it to be worth 2 talent points. Alternatively, like, we could just get more sources of bleed damage or make our bleeds do more damage, and give us a bleed to play around too, which, like, personally, I think would be really fun to have one more thing to play around. For example, like, you could make Raptor Strike repeat a portion of its damage as a bleed. I also have, like, an idea for a really strong bleed with Hogstrider, which I want to cover in a bit. The second thing I want to talk about is Primal Surge. Primal Surge is one of our capstones in the bottom right of our talent tree, and it causes Kill Command to generate 1 extra stack of tip, and it increases the tip bonus. But the thing that I really want to focus on here is the 1 extra stack of tip. To be honest, this spec feels pretty unplayable without Primal Surge. With Primal Surge, Survival has a very fluid cadence where you cast Kill Command, you cast 2 damaging abilities, and you repeat. And we also have so many talents that revolve around spending Tip of the Spear. Like for example, the entire Sentinel hero tree revolves around spending Tip to gain Stargazer stacks and to proc Sentinel's Mark. We also need to spend tip to proc Strike as 1, which is like a gigantic source of our damage in single target and in AoE. If you try playing survival without this talent, the spec just feels like really off. Something as core to the spec as Primal Surge should either be baseline or it needs to be much higher in the talent tree, and I don't think that a talent that makes the spec feel complete should be a capstone. So the next thing that I want to talk about is Flamefang Pitch, and unfortunately, it turns out Flamefang Pitch is pretty weak in both single target and in AoE. In AoE, it's around 3% worse than running alternative builds, and this is the best case scenario for Flamefang Pitch. FFP also completely tanks your boss damage in keys, so with an FFP build, you're doing roughly 7 or 8% less boss damage. And not only that, Flamefang Pitch is still really frustrating to use because it's a ground targeted AoE that mobs can just run out of. Like if I look and I cast it right here, this is not a super big radius, and all of these sims are done assuming that mobs are standing in Flamefang Pitch for the entire duration. So even if mobs stay in this for the entire duration, it's still a really weak talent. With all of this in mind, Flamefang Pitch just doesn't feel good to press. It's basically like a slightly stronger Wildfire Bomb on a 1 minute cooldown with really awkward targeting, and these talents are even worse than the bleed build talents. Now there are some cool things about the Flamefang Pitch talents though, like Grenade Juggler down here. Grenade Juggler is really fun to play with because it gives you a tiny window where you're getting more bombs, which means you're getting more boomsticks too, and I really like when you press Flamefang Pitch, you also get an extra bomb. It's like kind of hectic, but it's kind of fun to play around, so I really like Grenade Juggler even though Flamefang Pitch itself is not very good. Wildfire Imbuement is also really cool thematically, like, you throw Flamefang Pitch, and your weapon and your pet is on fire, and you're dealing extra fire damage. Like, that's really cool. But, Wildfire Imbuement is super weak, so it's also not worth running on single target, and this is only a single target talent. Personally, I just want to see Flamefang Pitch reworked entirely, but keep intact, like, Grenade Juggler, because the Grenade Juggler gameplay is really fun, and also keep Wildfire Imbuement, because, like, thematically, Wildfire Imbuement is really cool. Maybe we can make like Flamefang Pitch into a player-based AoE that really leans into Wildfire Imbuement. There was this cantrip weapon in Aberrus that caused your attacks to deal like AoE fire damage and you were shooting out these really cool lava waves. And I think something along those lines fits the theme that Flamefang Pitch is going for and would be much less frustrating to play with. You could also even lean into like the pet side of things and have a huge fire pet ability called Flamefang and just build around that. Now technically, you could just buff the hell out of Flamefang Pitch and make it good. And like, sure, that's an option, but it makes all of the other issues with Flamefang Pitch worse. So if you make Flamefang Pitch a really strong button, it makes the ground targeted issues feel even worse than they already do, because then mobs running out of the Flamefang Pitch AoE would feel really bad. So up next, I want to talk about Hogstrider. Hogstrider is still never worth spending in both single target and in AoE, and because of this, it feels like Pack Leader is just really lacking something. Like when you compare Pack Leader gameplay to Sentinel gameplay, Sentinel has this really fun dynamic gameplay where you're playing around Sentinel's mark procs, but Pack Leader doesn't have anything like that, and we're ignoring like one of the core talents in Pack Leader, so it feels like we're really lacking something. Because Hogstrider is so weak, that also means that the choice node underneath it is also never worth taking. Like Hoof and Blade is super weak because Hogstrider hatchet tosses are weak, so it's never worth taking this choice node. Honestly, this is a really easy fix. Like you could just buff the damage increase granted by Hogstrider, and it genuinely needs like a massive buff right now, because pressing hatchet toss with Hogstrider in AoE does less than 1% of your damage, and since it competes with stronger abilities, it's just never worth spending. So like for example, if you make this number 600% extra damage on hatchet toss, that would be around 3% of your overall, so like that's not a crazy amount, but it would definitely be worth pressing. So earlier when I was talking about bleeds and shower of blood, I mentioned Hogstrider. I think there's a really cool opportunity here to make Hogstrider feel good to press and help with the lack of bleeds in the Pack Leader kit. You can make Hogstrider cause hatchet toss to apply a really strong bleed, and this would have synergy with all of our bleed talents, and it would make it feel satisfying to press. Since Hogstrider lasts 20 seconds, this would also let us hold on to the proc for like the best time to spend it, so we can pull the proc and have some cool gameplay around that. I think this would be a pretty simple change, and it would be a really huge win for Pack Leader. The last thing that I want to talk about is dual wield scaling. Right now, dual wield is only good on Pack Leader because of this hero talent in the Pack Leader tree called Lethal Barbs. Since dual wield Pack Leader can generate a lot of focus, it allows Pack Leader to have like some really interesting gameplay where you mostly ignore casting Wildfire Bomb on single target. Since Sentinel doesn't have anything that benefits dual wielding, it's just straight up worse. Currently, dual wield Sentinel is about 3% worse in single target and even more in AoE, and this gap is only going to get bigger and bigger as we get more gear throughout the expansion. Right now, Survival Hunter abilities don't factor in offhand weapon DPS when you calculate ability damage, and there's an easy two-part solution here that would make dual wield more viable for both hero trees. The first step is normalizing Lethal Barbs. So if we want to attempt to balance dual wield, we need to address Lethal Barbs. You can just make this talent be like a flat bonus to focus regeneration regardless of weapon type, but as long as Lethal Barbs exists like this and gives us extra focus regen for our auto attacks, dual wield is always going to be unbalanced for Pack Leader. The second thing we have to do after we address Lethal Barbs is to add some type of scaling while dual wielding. So this could just be something as simple as like a flat damage or agility buff while dual wielding. For example, While dual wielding, your damage is increased by X%. Honestly, this would be the easiest solution, and it could just be tuned up every tier if dual wield is too weak, or tuned down if it's too strong. The more complex solution is adding offhand scaling to all of our abilities, and this is something that Frost DKs and Windwalker monks have, but I imagine it's a lot more difficult to implement and balance, but it is another solution and something that other specs do have. And for simplicity's sake, I just think that the flat aura buff is the easiest solution. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. These are all just smaller changes that I would hope to see in 12.0.5. I think they're pretty reasonable for a minor patch update, and these changes would go a long way towards improving survival. Now, does the spec have other issues? Absolutely. This is not an all-inclusive list. It's just all the changes that I would like to see that would match what we typically get in minor patches. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. What changes do you want to see for survival? Do you agree or disagree with this list? If you liked the video, please give it a like and subscribe if you're new because it really helps me out and it helps the channel out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.